Sure. There. Okay. 5:31. Chris is here.
Hi, Chris.
Well, I see your name. Are you on the phone?
Hi, Chris. I think she's trying to come in.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Leslie is coming too.
Oh,
Yeah, there she is.
there's Leslie. Hey, Leslie.
Hi, Leslie.
Hey, Leslie.
Do you hear us?
Wendy is coming.
Wendy. Hi, Wendy.
I think Wendy's on the phone. No, she's
No,
there.
I see her.
Yeah, I can see her.
Oh, is that you, Anne? Did you call in?
Yeah.
That's Anne, yes.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm finally getting caught up. So it's coming along. Slowly but surely.
Are you there, Chris?
I'm here. I can hear you now.
Okay. All right. Can you hear us,
We
Leslie?
can see you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. We've got a quorum now. Almost.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep track. I just realized as we were logging on that I forgot to post the chat from our last chat. So I have to do that. I'm sorry. I'm moving slowly. Let's see, Leslie. I'm taking roll. So
Yeah, I did. I already did it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Mercedes switched over from my other chat.
What's that?
I just switched over from my other chat. I'm doing the
Oh,
challenging
you're
behavior.
doing it. Oh, okay. Leslie, will you I feel like you have to talk to us a little bit about that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah. So there's a program that is being offered through the Montessori Foundation, and actually Tim Selden is one of the speakers, but the co-presenters are a Montessori primary teacher and behavior analyst like me, and the other one is a Montessori teacher and a special educator. And they are discussing challenging behaviors in Montessori classrooms. And I think they're going to do a series right now. They're mostly talking about primary classrooms, but I think they're going to be focusing on different age groups sort of as they go. This is their first time presenting this information through the Montessori Foundation. But it's really interesting. But they, and I have lots of information and resources if anybody's interested, but it's a 4-part series. So it was last Tuesday, this Tuesday, and the next 2 Tuesdays. So it's an hour and a half before this chat. And it tends to run over, so I just have to leave that chat and come to ours. But basically the premise is that Montessori should be accessible to all children, regardless of their specific learning needs, which is a real challenge. Obviously, I think I know Anne, you've talked about some kids with challenging behaviors, but I think we all have children that have some challenging behaviors, and so they're talking about adaptations that we can make to appeal to those points of interest for these children, and really, that there's a growing trend that there are more children that are sort of atypical and needing some adaptations, and that we, as Montessori teachers, are well equipped to be able to respond to that. But we have to continue to use our observation skills and need some ideas of strategies to use. So, but it's great.
Your volume's off, Mercedes.
I can't, I got the vacuum. These guys are cleaning out my vents because Ben thought it would be a good idea for them to come right now. Like how I just threw him under the bus. So have they talked a little bit about materials at all? Because we don't have a lot of like diagnosed special needs or different needs in our classroom, but I feel like they're there on, they're there. And so we find that the biggest place where we have to be adaptive in the primary classroom is with the materials and like adapting them so that they're modified in a way that is accessible to those children. And that's something that makes a lot of primary guides very uncomfortable.
Right. I think that they, we last week was kind of an introduction, just an overview, and they pointed out several different books actually that are really helpful in this topic that I wasn't aware of, which is great. That there's lots of information out there, but they just today started talking about how we might adapt our physical environment, and they talked about some things like noise canceling headphones, that we have some children that have some auditory sensitivity, obviously special things that we can have in our peace corners that might appeal to kids that need some extra visual stimulation. They talked a little bit about weighted vests, but I think they're going to go through practical life, language. I think they're going to go through each area and talk about examples of specific learners and ways that they modified those materials or how they presented that material to that child, which I think will be helpful. Yeah. But you're saying that it makes people nervous to sort of deviate from that plan. Yeah.
Well, I would think for a toddler program, it would be, less intimidating because there's not as much emphasis on the materials as in a primary program where it is very materials based, and to modify or use those materials in a way that they weren't entirely meant to be used. I can see some primary teachers being very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to hear how they modify things. Just as an aside, I was working on my family resource guide for my assignment for this week, and I came across a group in my area called Way to Grow, and they're occupational and speech services, and they, I guess, have been providing services to Montessori schools in the area, and they have just produced and are selling Montessori materials that have been modified for kids based on the expertise of speech and occupational therapy. So I'm really interested to see what they have. I guess they have a partnership with the Montessori Collective, which I'm not familiar with, but I'm new to this whole thing. But it sounded pretty interesting.
That's awesome. That sounds really promising. I'm glad that you signed up for more work.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. What do you think, Dabika? What should we talk about? Can you guys hear me?
Rashini. Rashini's here.
Rashani's here. Eugenia is here. Hi, Eugenia.
Yeah.
All I hear is the vacuum. Can you guys hear that in the background?
No, I can't.
I don't hear it.
Oh, okay. That's all I hear. Okay. Well, I was, let's see. Casey was sharing that the children in her classroom are really sick. How are you guys doing with illness in your community?
Allergies.
Yeah. Okay.
Coughs and runny noses.
A lot of coughing and runny
Spring
noses.
is here, so.
Yeah. It's spring and fall are, I think, the hardest times.
Yes,
like everything, it gets a little warm and then things start to grow. And I think that the important thing is to make sure that we take care of ourselves. Like that it's definitely the hardest part of our job, I think, is caring for sick children. Like I feel like it's a pretty delicate balance, even like under absolutely the best possible conditions. And then you throw some illness in there, and that makes it it makes it really sad. And I have said on multiple occasions that it's definitely the saddest part of my job is holding a child and knowing that they just want to be with their mom. They want to be at home. They deserve to be at home. You know, like it's really difficult, and I don't have any great, like, I don't know that there's a solution to it. Because the parents have to work, you know, like just like we do.
Yeah, that's why it's so hard. It's because, like, I don't for a second believe that any parent would be like, oh, my kid is sick. I don't care. I'm going to put them in childcare anyway. Like, it's not that. Like, we got to do what we got to do. And, like, you know, yeah, we can keep them home. But, like, when hand, foot, and mouth kicks in, you know, like, that'll take you out for a week. And you can't do that. You can't take a week off, you know, to be home with your sick kiddo. And it's especially hard. I'm sure you guys can all relate. If you have your own child who's sick, like, that's what I struggle with at work is, like, when my Ruby gets sick, if her dad can't watch her, I can't bring her into the school, but then that means that they're short a teacher. And I don't know, I feel like, you know, on one hand, I don't want to expose any other children to sickness, but on the other hand, I feel like I have to be at work still, and it's just like, what do you do? Like, what do you do?
And also, the child is not comfortable either, you know,
Right.
because if a child is sick and you are carrying her with you to the same, like, school environment, she's not going to be comfortable either. She needs her home and she needs her room to be comfortable.
Yeah, today I had a little girl that was just standing in the middle of our room crying and her nose running. She just was feeling terrible. And I put her cot out and just rocked her and put her to sleep. Like, she couldn't eat. She couldn't do anything. She was just felt horrible, you know. Sad.
Especially nowadays, we are in a single family, no grandparents, nobody in the home, only parents are there. That makes it hard for the parents too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But so Casey, there's subs that come in and work, right? When people are, how do you maintain ratios then?
We adjust, like, today, or it was yesterday, guys, I was sharing with Mercedes yesterday, both of my assistants were out. One was violently ill and the other one's daughter had strep, so it was just me. So the assistant directress was able to come in during the breakfast period so I could greet parents and bring, you know, the children in, and she could sit in there while the kiddos were eating breakfast. But then she had to go do her job, so they sent Mr. Wesley, who is an assistant on the preschool side, they sent him in, and it's not easy. And that's been something that's been brought up on multiple occasions, is we need subs. And when I brought this up, just another time when there was a bunch of sickness going around, I'm like, well, why don't we have a sub list? And one of the reasons, other than, you know, money, we're a nonprofit organization. We don't have the means to just hire anyone to come in whenever, you know. But one of the answers was, well, sometimes I think having a sub come in is even more disruptive because the sub's wondering, they don't know how to do things, they don't know procedures. I know.
Well, you have to train them. I mean, you have to.
How about the parents? Have you ever tried the parents? Because when I was in a charter school, we used to have parents in the sub list, and we were calling them very often, so they already knew the whole procedures, and we have a list for the sub and also the classroom teacher. will write down what they expect from the sub on that particular day. So they were, aware of the whole situation, and they knew the kids know them, and they know the environment. It is much easier to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really great point. Maybe I'll bring that up at our next meeting. And especially if we have some type of like orientation, like biannually, where, the parents come in who know nothing about Montessori. We can say, hey, this is what we do. This is why we do this. If you're interested in, becoming a sub, maybe we can do some like, a weekend here and there to, go over procedures and that type of thing. I think that's a really, really great idea, Dabika. I think I'll bring that up to my directors.
Yeah, we did use that, and it is so helpful because for the parents, you really don't have to pay anything, and also that way the parents know what is going on in the classroom, and that's also prepared them for their children at home.
Yeah, and there are a lot of parents who want to be in the class.
They are interested.
So I'm sure there would be plenty of people who would be interested in that. That's a really, really great idea. I'll throw that out.
Don't they have to be fingerprint cleared?
Can you say that again?
Don't they have to be fingerprint cleared?
Can you say it a little louder? I can't hear you.
Like fingerprint cleared, like
for the sub, depends on how often you want them. If you really want them, like a regular basis, it's better to have those things done. And if the parent is really interested, they won't mind to do those things, health checkup and fingerprint. So
the rules
it shouldn't be any problem.
At the school that I'm at, the parents come and sub for like lunchtime breaks or afterwards or before, so they're not there all day. They just kind of do stand-in, just so the teacher can get a break every now and then. And then I don't think they're required, if they're not there for so many hours, they're not required to have those standards.
Right.
It probably varies from state to state because in the state of Oregon, there does need to be clearance before anybody goes in in an employment capacity. Like if parents are volunteering, there's probably a little bit of a wiggle room line, but when you start talking about parents being that probably just is a state by state rule. I would say.
Right.
I don't know. Some of those excuses, Stacey, definitely just sound like a cop out. Like I'm a non-for-profit school as well, and we still have a sub list, and it's substantial, and they get called all the time. And honestly, as a teacher in the classroom, I mean, your administrators, yes, they run the school, but they're not in the classroom. And as a teacher, I personally hate it when we're constantly switching people back and forth between classrooms because for some reason we couldn't get a sub. That is far more disruptive than one sub who comes in for the whole day to cover.
Yes.
Because there's teachers going in and out, and that just doesn't make any sense. One new person who comes for the whole day makes far more sense.
Sure, and, no, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And I agree that it is.
I don't know what the overhead costs are for running a school in Montana, but you guys also have a much higher ratio than I do in New York. So
New York
so
it's hard.
You technically are making more money per classroom, and we still. It's a commitment that the administration needs to make, and it's a commitment in the lives of your employees. Like it makes a big difference.
If I can just vent for a little bit.
2 minutes.
Something that so it's me. I've probably said this before to you guys, but it's me, Amber, and Tristan in the toddler room. We call ourselves the Todd Squad. And for the past several months, because all three of us have our own children, and it's very frustrating for us, especially when sicknesses come about, because we are holding ourselves to the standards that the school hold the parents to, which is if your child is sick, do not bring them in. Yet there have been days when I have called in and I said, my child is throwing up, it's coming out of both ends, I cannot come in, I have to be with her. And they ask me to come in anyway. Can you just bring her in and we'll just keep her in the main office? And it's like, it just sends this overwhelming sense of like, we are not cared for. Like, do not bring your child sick to school, but if you work here, we need you. So you're exempt. That doesn't apply to you. And I'm going through that right now, and I'm sorry, I'm going to cry. It's been really emotional the past couple of days, but it's just been really hard because we all feel like we're not, it doesn't send a sense of like community, like, what's the point of even what's the point of even having sick days? Like, you get X amount of sick days a year if you can't even use them. If you're guilted for using a sick day, or if you're asked to come in anyway, and it's not okay. And this issue has been an issue for a long time now, and this past week and a half has been really, really taxing on me because we're having to deal with that. And it just like, it's like, oh, we don't care that your child is sick. Come in anyway. Like, and it's really frustrating. Sorry.
No, well, I mean, I don't, I think that I can understand how that would feel frustrating. And I think that it's those moments when you have the administrator asking you to do something that you're uncomfortable with. That's where, it's not a comfortable conversation, but but to just say, hey, why are you asking me to do something that you would say, and if there's room for Ruby to be in the office being cared for by office staff, then there should be enough flexibility for me to just be at home with her. But I would say that these kinds of issues breed resentments, and that is something that can go a couple different ways. And so if the Todd Squad fosters this resentment and like that, and doesn't kind of clearly communicate with the staff where their frustration, or the admin, where those frustrations lie, I think that that's going to end up being really, really potentially bad news, because I will also say that as an administrator, there's just not a lot of tolerance. Like I'm not saying that you're a bad apple, but one bad apple spoils the barrel. And so when admin identify staff that are cultivating a culture of discontent, even when it is, in your case, I think very warranted, you guys have legitimate complaints, that does not end well for that person. That's a situation where you remove that staff member and you kind of tell people, hey, if I don't know, like, it just sounds like the whole culture in your school is it's just a little like it's not healthy and physically, like it's so I would definitely share those concerns with somebody who, or if they're, I don't know. I mean, it's a tricky place.
It's not very peaceful.
It is
that
not
peaceful
healthy
atmosphere that we're looking for.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and also it is not healthy for the children. Right now, Casey, the way you are feeling, it will be spreaded over your children, and they are not going to get you 100%. When you are in the classroom, especially when Ruby is sick at home, or you bring her to the office, your mind is not going to be really free to work with these children that you are dealing in the classroom. So it's not going to be unhealthy, and you are not spiritually prepared for that kind of environment. So as a Montessorian, I would suggest that you need to have a conference with your administrator, and you need to explain that when my child is sick and you are asking me to come to the class, it could be a very polite very descriptive conversation that, you're asking me to come and join. I understand because I feel for my classroom children, but at the same time, I am not there for them the way I should be when I'm free. My mind is happy and I'm coming to work with spiritually prepared for it. I can give them 100%, but even if I'm working with the children, my mind is there in your office. What is Ruby doing?
Yeah.
And who is taking care of Ruby?
Yeah.
So all these things you need to sit down and discuss with her. And instead of going to your colleagues and talking to them, go straight to the director and sit down and ask her that I need to sit down with you. And when she is in she has time, make an appointment and sit down and talk about it. And you as a Montessori, if you start talking with her, and the other teacher will get the message, they will come with their point and talk to her also. So maybe she will do something about it. Because you are just, doing it in your mind and you are stressing yourself. And that's how you are not, I'm not saying physically, but emotionally, you are not fit for the children to be there for the whole day work.
Absolutely. And even when it's not my child who's sick, like for example, when it's Amber whose daughter has strep, I am stressed out all day because we're understaffed. And and I'm so on Amber's side. Like, yes, your daughter has strep. Not only does she need to heal and get well, but I don't want her exposing anyone else to that, And it seems so one-sided. Like they're adamant. And, they're like, we don't allow sick children in our school unless you work here because we need you.
Well, I think
in that situation, that situation, the best way to do is, I think the administration, sometimes they really don't realize what is happening with the teacher and how the relationship is. And you may not have a good relationship with the parents in that moment either, because if you are not worried about your child and some children are giving you hard time, that will have a reflection on their parents, and that can come back to the administration and say the teacher is doing this and that. So you don't want that. So in that situation, you can make a good relationship with the parents. So you can ask some parents to come and stay in your classroom for some times and for a half a day or full day, something. And that element, you can do it after you have a conversation with your administration.
Yeah, I think I'll definitely bring that up. I think that's a really good idea. I already feel like I know where this conversation is going to go, is because they're like, well, we don't want any more distractions, but that's where we train them. Because I come from a traditional education background where we had a sub list and we went to the regional office of education and we put our name on the sub list, and if you were sick that day, you just look at the list and you'd call us up. And I'm like, why can't we just do something like that? Like just have a list.
Yeah.
And then she's like, well, it's too distracting because they don't know what they're doing. So let's train them so they do know what they're doing.
Actually, I had some parents who came to do the sub in my classroom, and eventually they went for the training. They got so much interested in Montessori education, they wanted to have train, and they did that. So.
Well, there's Wildflower Montessori, which is like a template. Their model is parents in the classroom as a form of parent education. And so I think that what this, like, just moving forward, that know that, I'll dig into some practicum site requirements, because I know that AMS, I don't know what CGMS requires of practicum sites, but it seems like there might be, a practicum site requirement in terms of, let me take a look at what CGMS requires, and maybe there's a way to tie that in somehow, because, that would be convenient. I wish you the best.
I'm sorry to just totally offload on everybody.
Well, I mean,
It's
everybody
not-
knows what it's like to have an unresponsive administration. I think that
It's not.
Yeah, Casey, I'm sad to hear that you don't feel cared for. Like, I felt like that was a
That's
very
the
honest
thing.
statement.
Yeah, like that it just
you
it
don't
like,
feel cared for.
and like just like an overwhelming sense that like we are not we don't matter. Like and I hate to say that because both the administrators, the directress and the assistant directress, I have the most admiration and respect for these women. They are wonderful, wonderful Montessorians. They're wonderful women in general. And it's hard because I feel like it's not even that it's not malicious, you know, it's not in their intent. They have a school to run and they have to maintain ratio. So I understand their mindset, but it's like, okay, I'm understanding where you're coming from, but I feel like you're not understanding where we're coming from, because not only am I a teacher in your school, I'm also a parent, you know, of someone in your school. And I'm not coming to you necessarily as a teacher right now. I'm coming to you as a parent. And I expect the same amount of respect that you would give any other parent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a great, like, that you could say that, you know.
I can say it to you guys.
Yeah. Well, I know just because a school is nonprofit doesn't mean that people don't make money. And I will say that.
Yes. Exactly right.
Because I know that some of the people in the city of Portland, and also it may interest you to know that as nonprofits, tax returns are public property. So you can ask the IRS for a copy of the corporate return, and then you'll know how many people, what people are making. So I don't know that that's a big need, but like it's that all of that information is there and it's transparent. But just because a school is not for profit does not mean that the administration of like those are some of the most well paid people in education in the city. So not me.
Casey, I would encourage you to definitely finish this week that we're in right now, finish those videos, because John in his videos talks about these building relationships with parents. And I think even though we are teachers, because we're also parents, we, you know, need to be aware of how we should be being treated as parents whose children go to this school, and how the people working with us should be working to build relationships with us. And if we're not feeling that, you know, are the other parents feeling that? And sort of this could be much more than just how you're feeling as a parent.
Right. It's
so,
very correct,
you know, once you watch all his videos and really, you know, think on this and stuff, it might give you a little better insight to then go and talk with your administrators about how you're feeling. And then if you could phrase it as in, this is how I'm feeling as a parent, and I just want to make sure that, you know, I want to definitely make sure that we're not making other parents feel this way too. Like, we need to care for the whole family unit, not just the child.
Yeah.
So I'm having the same nonprofit like battle. We don't have a sub list either, but I mean that's like a whole mess. We like used to just ask for volunteers, and then we gave them like this $25 little like olive branch, and then we like, but they can only come in the morning. So if we need an afternoon sub, we pull one of the assistants from like lower elementary, and it's a debacle. But we're trying to schedule our summer program, and we have a couple of special needs students that I was discussing with Leslie, and so I'm trying to explain how we need like 2 full-time staff all day, and they're like, well, you know, for ratio you only need 1, and at nap time ratio changes. And I'm trying to explain how like these couple kids, we can't say for sure that they are going to nap or for any length of time. And I'm not okay with someone being out of ratio every single day. Like that's not okay. And so I'm trying to like say, okay, we have these many kids registered, which costs this much. And then we have staff, which we pay this much. And it's just kind of like, it has more to do than just the ratio of adults for kids. Like, we have to be able to meet everybody's needs that's in there, and that includes the adults. Like, we cannot leave them hanging every single day. We just can't. It's driving me nuts. So I'm kind of like just feeling stuck about it right now.
I bet that's really common that teachers feel stressed about ratios. Is that pretty common?
I think that, I don't have any really great advice. I started my program after kind of like I worked my way up from the bottom, and started as like the aftercare director and the assistant. So I don't run we have an in-house sub. I have 3 different people that I've trained to be substitutes. I don't want the parents in my classrooms personally. I think that what Wildflower is doing is great, but that's not for me. The teacher satisfaction is really important, because how can teachers be spiritually prepared to be with children if they don't get the support that they need from the administration? When I think about the job of the administration, I don't think about myself as being like the top of the organization. I actually think of an inverted triangle, and I'm at the bottom, and I support everything. Like, the teachers and the children are above me. And my job is to put myself in between them and uncertainty. And so it's hard for me to hear, and we've been actually specifically instructed by CGMS not to allow for these kinds of conversations. Like, there's a fine line, and I guess I don't really know. There's like CGMS doesn't want a situation where we just start kind of bitching about I think that I want to acknowledge, yes, you are dealing with some things that are very, very difficult, and I support you guys, and I will help you to role play if you want. I will help you to find the words, but I want to also make sure that when we have these conversations, they're really productive. So,
yes, it has to be very positive. Right.
Does that make sense? Okay, but I'm on your side, and I think that it's really hard, and I just really encourage like clear and direct communication, because I worry that everybody's gonna just kind of like suffer through it, and then one day you're gonna, well, first of all, you're gonna take it out on the everybody around you, because you're a human being, and stress really is not that kind of a stress is harmful, and then I just would hate to see you kind of explode like I would. So.
And that's not fair to even the people that you've deemed are treating you unfairly. I mean, not giving anybody any warning. People can't read your mind.
Yeah.
They don't know how you're feeling unless you tell them. So you have to be honest from the beginning.
Yeah, and it's also a part of being a teacher that you have to have a very good communication with your administration, with your parents, and your children, and that's part of you, that to be a Montessori teacher. So you with it, and the approach always should be in a positive way. And there are a lot of rationales that you're talking about, that you can give them the rationale and why you are so upset. And it's okay for anybody to be upset, and explain it why that person is upset, just like the children. You always ask them when they're upset, they need to let us know they are upset. They are happy or they're angry, whatever they are. All the emotions, you have to know how to express it in a positive way. So your positive approach, and I believe that all the administration wants the best for their program. And if you can talk to them with a positive approach, with all your rationale that you have in your head, you need to calm down and sit down and talk. You can resolve it.
I love you, Dabika. Every time we come on this chat, I feel like I learn something new from you. Thank you.
We all do. Thank you.
Right. Yay, Damika. Can I know this is a hard shift, but we're at. Yeah. I really want to talk about the movie Babies. That's like my favorite movie. I'm so excited that we got. Did everybody watch it? Did you guys all watch it? Yeah,
I have not
watched it yet.
Laura hasn't watched it yet.
I didn't.
You have to see it. It's so
I
good.
watched it, and my kids watched it with me. They loved it.
So
I watched it twice, and I made Brittany watch it with me. She's my 20-year-old. She was like, where the baby poops and the lady wipes it on her knee and uses the corn.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. I put this on the board, but I was in the theater when I saw that movie, and the whole theater was like, oh, like you could hear everybody when she did, because we're like, what's she doing? And then we're like, oh my God. Wow.
And then the lady, they bound that baby in like 3 different blankets and then take and tie it so tight. And then afterwards, she gets on a motorcycle with the husband, the little boy, her, and the baby. I'm like, that could be child abuse in the United States. People would call it in for child endangerment,
That's how they roll in
when my husband went to Haiti, he said it's not uncommon to see like a whole family, like a mom, a dad, and 3 kids on like a dirt bike. And I was just like, what? How's that even possible?
In Vietnam, the women would go out and they'd be like all dressed up in their skirts, and they'd be sitting side saddle on a scooter with their phone, and then there'd be a child in between them, and then the man driving, and then another child standing in front of them.
That's Sri Lanka too.
That's in India. That's in India.
I know.
You can see it in India.
I love it. And but when they bound up that little kid and got onto the motorcycle, I was like, oh my God. And then when Leslie, you saw the same thing I did, where he's like outside with no pants, because he's not, you knew when the kid in Namibia and where was the other, was he in Mongolia? It's just like
Mongolia.
Yeah. You knew that they were potty trained because they got pants. Like she got the little loincloth when she was potty trained in Namibia, and then little guy got his pants. They were like, okay, you can have pants now that I know you're not gonna wet
no. And he had no pants on, and he's climbing onto that metal bucket or something. And I was like,
I know. I was like, well, if he's not circumcised, he don't be.
I know.
Anyway,
I thought it was great though, because those are things that we worry about here, and we worry about the silliest little things. Like my assistant's like, he had 3 bowls of cottage cheese. Well, he'll be fine. I'm like, these people are not worrying about carrying their whole family on a dirt bike and bounding their child. I'm sure this kid's gonna survive if he has 3 bowls of cottage cheese. So it really, I was like, oh, we need to not worry about so many things that we worry about.
There were 2 things in that film that really, really struck me profoundly. And the first one was, it was right at the beginning when they were showing the births of all, was it 4 children that they did? They showed the births of the first 3 children, and it was just natural and organic and, normal. And then it comes to America, and they're like, the baby's like tied up to all these tubes, and like there's all these monitors, and I'm like, how necessary is that really? But then so I had that thought, but then I'm thinking, okay, well, this is, modern science, which is supposed to be like Western medicine is supposed to be like super great, I suppose. But so maybe we're onto something. I don't know. But look at all these women who didn't have any of that and were completely fine. And I'm like wondering how much. I feel like maybe damage is the wrong word to use, but along those lines, like what are we actually doing by using all of all of that technology? Is it that important? And then the other thing that really struck me was like, in America, we do not let our children crawl around on the floor or in the dirt or like drink from a creek. Like And they don't even care. They're like, meh, these are, it's dirt. It's
Well,
gonna get
well,
on.
you know why? Because their immunity is already built.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the pollution, they live in the pollution. When I go to India, like this time when we went to India, we stay there for a little longer, and then when we come back, we get sick.
Oh yeah.
Because with all those pollutions that we collect, when we come here, that comes out. So it's very hard for us who live here and go there and think of going on the mud and all, but the children are always there, all over. They're working, they're playing with the muds all the time. They don't get sick. They don't get sick.
Well, these babies were like putting rocks in their mouths. And
yeah, they don't get sick.
Today, I had to tell Atticus 9 times, spit it out, spit it out, spit it out. And like, they didn't even bat an eye. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean,
that's what I'm thinking.
I don't want a kid to choke either. I don't know.
We worry about things that aren't, that little girl that was crawling around in the dirt and had the stick and was like chewing on the stick. And I'm like, well, I guess it's not going to hurt him.
That's
drinking from the creek.
When
I haven't watched it yet, so I want to, but I'm just wondering, back to the first thing you mentioned, Casey, about like the births.
Yeah.
So clearly the infant mortality rate in developed countries such as the United States is far lower.
Right.
So,
yes.
I mean, there is definitely something to Western medicine.
No, that's incorrect.
It's not?
No,
It is?
the U.S. has one of the highest infant mortality rates in the world.
Right.
Really?
Yeah. Yes. So that actually was
Overprotection.
So I'll send you that research.
Yeah, please do.
The rates did come down a little. The infant mortality rates came down a little bit recently. But it was like an all-time high just a couple years ago at like 6.2%, which is way higher than like, for the fact that we are like one of the most developed countries in the world.
But all the unnecessary intervention
does not correlate. Like, we're not doing better necessarily. Yeah.
I thought we were.
No. So I'll link you guys to that research. I know I joined the class in October, but we did talk a little bit about birth. Did you guys watch like the babies of being born or anything like that? Did you watch?
There was a speaker. Yeah, there was a speaker who was she a doula? Well, I forget who she was, but she talked about.
I can't remember her name.
Who was
At
that?
Residency, the movie, I can't remember what it was, and it was about the birth. I don't remember.
Well, I'll find the research and I'll send it along because
it's really interesting.
We should have lower rates considering how medicalized birth is in our country. And maybe like one of the biggest problems, I think, in the medicalization of birth is that as soon as you walk into the hospital, you're on a clock. And like, some guy decided at some point that the cervix takes 12 hours to dilate. And if your cervix doesn't move along that progression, failure to progress, so we're going to give you some Pitocin. And if that doesn't work, maybe we'll break your water bag. And if that doesn't work, like, maybe we'll give you some more Pitocin. And like, now your contractions slowed down. And now we're going to do a C-section. So, good thing we're here to save you and your baby. And I'm sorry to be cynical about that because there's definitely a really great.
No, I'm kind of mad about it too, Mercedes, because, okay, so in Bozeman, this is where I had my Ruby. Their policy is if your child is breech, or if there's literally any interruption with birth, they will do a C-section. No questions. If your baby's breech, they won't try to turn her. They won't try to allow you to have her that way. They will automatically do C-section. And, especially as a woman who has never had a child before, your doctor's telling you this and you're like, oh, okay, I trust you. You have the PhD. You must know what you're talking about. you know, and then like you do a little bit more research and you grow, you become a little bit more wiser, and you're like, wait a second, we're not on my clock, we're on your clock. This is what you're trying to do, you know. And it's kind of, it's infuriating, like some man telling you, oh, you're not able to do it, let me mansplain your birth for you. It's dumb. Anyway, I'm right there with you, Mercedes. I'm a little bitter.
Well, I mean, I don't, you know, I'll send you guys some statistics, but the best video, it's like 16 minutes. It's called Reducing Infant Mortality. And it's like, they specifically talk about the US infant mortality rate versus other developed countries and other developing countries, and how who are we really helping. But I mean, because I think that also we tend to be very pragmatic, and like, it doesn't matter, like, oh, you know, the end, like, oh, let's focus on the healthy child. And yes, of course, nobody wants a dead baby, so you know, that's important. But I don't it is interesting how they started the movie with the birth, and the juxtaposition between the different you know, ways that each culture handled the birth. And I thought it was interesting too that the woman in Mongolia, that she did go to the hospital, or she went to some clinic and she had her baby in the clinic.
But it was so vastly different from America. I literally gasped when I saw the American baby being born. Like, after watching these, like, this beautiful, like, natural birthing, you know, videos. And then,
but we need to remember that one video of one birth is not a clear indication of everyone's in America. I don't want us to, like, be like, the United States sucks at this, like, you know, because it's not the way it always is. And
right, yeah, that's a good point.
I don't really know. I don't really know what happened, like, the whole story, like this mother's pregnancy.
Just based on the movie,
like,
at least from the 4 babies that they profiled, it was quite a contrast. And I think,
oh, I'm sure, yeah.
I don't know, it kind of drove a point home. Not necessarily trying to, like, you know, categorize Americans as these robots or whatever, but I mean, it was quite the, you know, the stark contrast.
Do you think that was a pretty, I mean, I guess that's one of the things that we could talk about. Do you think that was a pretty typical birth for America? I mean, if you can even say such a thing, what's typical for America? I mean, that's kind of what
I would think so. That's, I mean, I that's, whenever I imagine a birth, that's what I imagine. And maybe that's because that's all I know. You know, obviously I've never been to Namibia. I've never been to Mongolia. So all I know is Americanized births. And that's not to say that, you know, they don't have, or in America, we don't have other types of birth. Like, I know, you know, women have like home births and water births, and that's beautiful too. But I feel like the standard, or like the status quo, is going to the hospital and everyone's hooked up to machines.
I think that probably happens that because the majority of births, you know, the most people live in concentrated cities, you know, so the majority of births are happening maybe in those places. And
right.
And I don't live in a large city. So for me, when I picture this, I'm like, well, that doesn't describe my sort of immediate culture at all. Like, I live in Ithaca. It's small. I don't live in Ithaca, but that's where my children were born. But it's small. We're really, like, it's a community that's really focused on doing things naturally. And so it's hard for me to hear these things. And I'm just like, but I feel like we're being lumped together, and that bothers me, you know, because I had 2 C-sections. Don't get me wrong. I had C-sections. I wish I didn't, but it didn't come about because the doctor was like, oh, this is not happening right. This is not, you know, they were warranted. So I think we just, I don't know. I want to watch the movie, and I'm going to, but I just really want to be careful that we're not categorizing everybody because of one video. Like,
right.
So
no, I hear you, Laura. I think that's a really important point that you bring up. You know, I totally hear you on that for sure.
So what about some of the other parenting practices that we saw? Like Eugenia, was there anything that you were surprised about?
No, I was just thinking of what Lauren was saying, that when I hear you talk about how it is in America, it's so different here than it is in your country. And it's still America, but it is completely different from there. It's really, our country is really small, but our hospitals are really careful. And as I hear you talking about children just like playing outside and playing the creek, that's what happens here. Maybe not in the city, but if 15 minutes from here, well, that's what my kids did when we went to our house out of the city. And that's what children do every day, not only here far away from the city, but everywhere. It's just like common practices and nothing happens. They're fine. Yeah, so I was just thinking about it. And birds, I guess, I think there are many tendencies right now, like to have like the organic experiences and everything. And I just had that is actually a funny story. My aunt, she's a pediatrician. She's very careful and everything. And her son, they had a baby last year, but they didn't want to have their baby in a hospital. So they went to their house out of the city, and they had like I don't know, they just wanted like the baby to be born from the earth. So they made like this a fire at night, and the baby was born there. And my aunt, the grandma of the baby, who's a pediatrician, it was like a mess because they haven't vaccinated him or anything. They don't believe in vaccines. And yeah, I know. And he was born after a fire at night. And well, you could imagine. And he's completely fine. He hasn't gotten sick in a year. So it makes you think.
Definitely.
Yeah.
How about you, Wendy? How about you, Wendy?
Do you have anything to say?
Well, I was just thinking about, especially the birth in Namibia. The women just really hung out together really closely, and so it was probably seemed simpler and more natural to just do it the way she did, because she had probably seen how many births since she was a little girl. I've never been to a birth until I had my child. You know, you hear reports from your sisters or whoever, but you haven't been there. So when the doctor says, yeah, this is what I think we need to do, I think we are more inclined to believe that, because he does have more experience than I did. He does have more training. And so I think that's kind of why we fall into that, and we're generally comfortable with it. Plus, in America, we really respect education. Doctors are some of the most respected people in our society. Yes. So if they say you should have this type of procedure or that type of procedure, we're more likely to believe it than somebody who is surrounded by her grandmother and great-grandmother and sisters and aunts and everybody. I did think at first the Mongolian mom who went to the hospital to have her baby, at first I thought that was odd, because they did seem to live such a natural kind of life. But then I realized if you looked at her home, there was nobody else there. So yeah, she's going to go where she can get whatever kind of help is available. But I was also thinking, when she got on that motorcycle holding her baby, I mean, she sat straddling that thing. I was not prepared to ride a motorcycle the day after I had a baby. So I had to really respect her for that.
I did not think of that. Empathy.
she's in these tight jeans and she's getting on this motorcycle and going off across the fields. And I just, more power to her, because I couldn't do it.
That's awesome.
So did anybody notice in that video too that the baby had a something around its ankle and it was tethered to the bed where it couldn't go very far?
I was
Yes,
like,
I
man,
thought that
why
was
didn't I
interesting.
think of that?
But there again, her child was left alone a lot because
I know.
look where they lived. You know, he was going to have to learn how to be alone.
Left the baby on the bed for a long time. And
with the rooster.
Nobody was watching.
The rooster was there, so that was okay.
Yeah.
You know, I did wonder though how much the parents were behind the cameras, and the cameraman was like, "No, let's just watch him be in his, you know, in his natural surroundings." And how much were the parents actually gone?
They were definitely.
I don't know though, because the
that.
kids, I see the kids looking at like, Mom, what the hell? Why are you tying me to the
that was probably one of the more shocking things for me. Like, we talked about that for a long time, and I'm glad that it came up. Okay,
Mercedes, before we sign off,
Rashani's getting.
I just want to say I found the video.
Which one?
I found the video infant that was discussing
it's
infant
online.
mortality.
Yeah, it's
Great.
called Reducing Infant Mortality. It's by Debbie Takagawa. It's one of the best films.
Well, also there was one that we watched that was Ina May Gaskin was her name.
Oh, was it Birth Matters?
It's reducing fear in birth.
Oh, okay. She so the TED Talk. Yeah. She boiled down her movie. It came out a few years. I saw that in the theater too. Cuz I love her. She's the movie was called Birth Matters, and the TED Talk was based on the movie. But she's amazing. You know, her books are great too. Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, and I mean, I think that the movie wasn't supposed to. I mean, I don't know. It's easy to generalize from the different people are definitely supposed to represent like a significant population, right, of the way that people live.
Status quo,
I mean, kind of like what, and the filmmakers, if you look, like, there's actually a lot of backstory and like information online about the children, and there's like, where are they now kind of stuff, and they talked about, like, one of the things that didn't even occur to me, but was addressed by the Namibian family, was how respectful the filmmakers were coming into each community, and that the participants were compensated, that they were paid for their participation in the movie, and that really helped them and bettered their lives. And all right. Cool. Any last words?
Thank you for letting me vent and cry to you guys. Sorry, it's been a long week and it's only Tuesday.
All right. Hang in there.
I feel for you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I will practice with you if you want to do some role playing. Like, sometimes it just takes a couple. I'll do that with any of you. If anybody wants to talk, to connect, where I can coach you a little bit. If you want to do some role playing, even just practicing, like with a parent, even, please know that I'm totally available for something like that for you guys.
And I can attest to that, Mercedes, in terms of sending you an email that was difficult to respond to, and you giving me a really detailed example of how to respond.
Well,
so thank you.
Yay, you're welcome. I'm glad that I could help.
I'm super thankful that I have you guys as resources. Not even for this course, but like in life in general. I feel like I'm going to be like, hey guys, should we have a video chat? And it's like 10 years from now.
For sure. Why not?
I know.
Always.
All right,
it's a very